let's talk about Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Okay, so the Russians are saying that Ukraine is going to attack it, and the Ukrainians are saying that Russia is going to attack it. Let me give you the facts, okay, and then I will give you my opinion at the end, and I think you might have a good idea, pretty good idea of what I'm going to say. But to start with, it's definitely the Ukrainians and NATO who are hyping this up the most, who are really making the most noise about this issue and blaming Russia in advance. Here's Zelensky warning earlier today about this.
Зараз від нашої розвідки ми маємо інформацію про те, що на даху кількох енергоблоків Запорізької атомної станції російські військові розмістили предмети, схожі на вибухівку. Можливо, щоб імітувати удар по станції, можливо, у них якісь інші сценарії, але в будь-якому випадку світ бачить і не може не бачити, що єдиним джерелом небезпеки для Запорізької атомної станції є саме Росія і ніхто інший. На жаль, не було вчасної і масштабної реакції на теракт проти Каховської гідроелектростанції. Це може надихати Кремль на нове зло. Зупинити його – це обов'язок усіх в світі, і ніхто не може залишитись осторонь. Бо радіація нікого не залишає осторонь. Зараз від нас...
Okay, so that's what he said. Just to give you an idea where this nuclear power plant is, okay? It's here, okay? So it's the largest in Europe, not just in Ukraine. It's the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, okay? Now, to give you the layout, it has 6 cores, okay? By the way, the Ukrainian, the utility company, right? The state company that runs this is called Energoatom. That's the Ukrainian one. In any case, they have 6 cores in this nuclear facility in the plant. 5 out of the 6 reactors have been completely shut down since September. Okay, so that's almost a year ago now that most of the plant's been completely deactivated. Now they've only kept so that's in cold shutdown, they call it. There's only one reactor, reactor 5 or unit number 5, which is in hot state, okay, or hot shutdown. And the reason for that is basically that they can bring it back up faster, and it's kept in hot shutdown so that it can supply energy to the rest of the plant. Now, you guys remember that about a month ago, the dam collapsed, right? The Kakhovka Dam, and they blamed it on Russia. I'll get back to that in a second. But why was this dam important? It's important because the water that goes and flows to the reservoir and keeps this nuclear facility cool, it started, it started running out, okay? So now you have less water to cool the reactors. The water is draining from both the reservoir, the Kakhovka reservoir, and also in the Nikopol area. So that's like on the opposite side from the plant, the nuclear plant, on the opposite side of the river, the Dnipro River. So you have, it's not critical, but it's very bad. It's bad enough that they finally shut down that reactor to cold shutdown on Thursday. Okay, so because of all of these factors, they're blaming Russia for some impending attack, and also that the dam was destroyed. How convenient! Now it's become so bad. They've put these control rods. They've reinserted them basically to in the reactor core to stop the nuclear fission reaction and to stop any heat and pressure being generated, okay? Because they're unable to control this thing. So this is from the International Atomic Energy Agency. I know this is a bit boring for those of you who are not necessarily interested in nuclear reactor technology, but we need to say this because this is the IAEA is the foremost or the top authority on all nuclear matters, right? It's part of the United Nations. It's based in Vienna. Now, they are the experts, and we should listen to what they're saying, right? Not just some random statement from Russia or from Ukraine. So they're saying here, this is from a few weeks ago on actually on June 30th, right? So the IAEA said that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, it depends on external power, Okay, it needs that power to cool the reactors and other essential nuclear safety and security functions. And if it fails again, as has happened repeatedly in recent months, the site only has emergency diesel generators available for the electricity that it needs to pump the water that cools the reactors and spent fuel ponds. Right. So this is it's a whole list of things that depend on each other. Right. You need enough diesel for the generators, and that's in case of emergency, so that you can then pump the water that then cools the reactors, etc. The IAEA has teams of experts that are permanently present at Ukraine's other nuclear power plants to assist in efforts to maintain nuclear safety and security during the conflict. Guess what? They also have nuclear experts in Zaporizhzhia, this very power plant that they're accusing the Russians of sabotaging. So I want to play this video of what Rafael Grossi says. So he's the head of the IAEA, he's the director general. And he's literally been to the Zaporizhzhia plant, I think, 3 times in the last 10 months or something like that. He travels there often, right?
Well, what the top level in Ukraine is saying, Vladimir Zelensky a few days ago said that according to his intelligence, Russia has made all the preparation for an attack on the plant, not an accident, an attack. His chief of military intelligence said that preparations are being done. Russian troops have moved vehicles charged with explosives into the plant. They've mined the cooling pond. You have a team on the ground. Is this what they're witnessing?
Well, I would never, enter into an argument with the president of Ukraine, whom I know very, very well and with whom I've been in contact regularly and meeting with him personally. What I can say is I was there. I did not see this kind of development. Our teams are there and they are reporting every day what's happening. I'm not privy to this intelligence report that you are referring to.
Right. So you don't think that there will be a Russian attack on the plant? It's not what you're seeing.
What I'm saying is that we don't see what you just said. In terms of the future, I wouldn't be so, adventurous into getting to, what is going to happen or not happen there. I think anything can happen. This is what worries me.
Right. I want to turn quickly to.
I don't know, man, but I'll take his word any day over both Russia and Ukraine, because he actually knows what he's talking about. It's his mandate to take care of these things. Now, does that mean that the IAEA is uncorruptible and doesn't sometimes serve the interests of the West? Of course it does. The Americans try very hard to compromise these institutions as much as possible. And I'm not talking about Rafael Grossi's integrity. I'm talking about institutions like OPCW, like IAEA, because that's just how politics works. But you need to understand that the same day, like literally as Zelensky's pointing the finger at the Russians, they have scientists on the ground that they don't belong to Russia, they don't belong to Ukraine, they belong to the IAEA. They're the experts. There's nothing there. And you still have this mania, like every goddamn outlet, I swear to God, go look it up. Guardian, ITV, BBC, CNN, Fox, every single goddamn one. And in German and French, the same thing. All of them hyping up this myth, this impending attack by Russia. Why the hell would Russia, please explain this to me, why the hell would Russia attack a nuclear facility that they already control? The Russians are not fighting a battle to gain control over it. They already have control. They've had control since day one. Not literally. It's rather the first month after the invasion, right? Or since the war started and exploded. They've assumed control after a month. So you're telling me that they're going to bomb a nuclear site where their own soldiers and scientists are stationed, and IAEA scientists are stationed, so that they can kill their own people and piss off the UN's nuclear watchdog? Wow, that makes a lot of sense. You must have a very big brain. Well done. I'm sure this is also, related to how I'm sure this also explains why Russia blew up the Kakhovka Dam, which they depend on for water in Crimea and depend on to cool this very nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia. I'm sure this is also why Russia blew up their own pipeline, right? Just to blow up their own pipeline for the sake of doing it. And that's why they also blew up the Crimea bridge, right? Every single time one of these immense major attacks happens, it has to be the Russians, right? It has to be them, because NATO would never do a thing like that. Ukraine and the United States would never do false flags. Oh no. So again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the term false flag. It's essentially when you have somebody. Think of Hitler with the Reichstag, right? So what did he do? He burnt it down and then blamed it on the communists and socialists, so he could go and ban them and ban other parties. And what does Ukraine stand to gain from this? Like, what possible reason would anyone have for doing this? The reason here is that Ukraine's counteroffensive has failed miserably. It's an utter flop. They were hyping this for months, and not it just didn't come into fruition. It just didn't happen. The only things that we saw were sending kamikaze drones to attack the Kremlin. Have you gone mad? And then they were also sending Bradleys and Leopards, so these German and American tanks that they had been begging for. They finally got them, and then what happened? The Russians just destroyed multiple columns of tanks, and they didn't even get to the defenses yet. So the Ukrainians didn't even reach the defenses to even begin to break through the Russian lines, right? The dragon's teeth, the tank traps, the conventional zigzag trenches, right? So they didn't even get there. They're already getting smoked because the Russians have been dug in for months. So that a complete flop. And the jets, it's not coming anytime soon because you need to train the pilots, etc., etc. This takes time. So now the only way that Zelensky has to save face, and more importantly than saving face, he wants to draw in direct, he wants to join the United States and Europe and NATO into a hot war with Russia. Okay? Because short of a nuclear disaster or something on the scale of this, Europeans, especially Europeans, they're not going to get the message that Zelensky wants to convey, that Russia is, an uncontrollable, crazy, maniacal threat. That's what he's trying to convince Europeans of. That Russia is so crazy that it's willing to blow up a nuclear plant and risk radiating Europe, and even killing its own personnel just because Putin is mad, right? It's the same old scenario. Like the Russians, they're just evil for the sake of being evil. Just like that, because we say so. They're just evil. They're crazy and dumb and evil. And that's why they would do it. And if that would happen, God forbid, then yeah, I think he would have a pretty convincing argument, because Europeans and Westerners are inclined to believe him over Putin. He would have a pretty convincing argument, if it were a false flag, to draw in NATO support, or shall we say, troop deployments. It's not like Ukraine isn't already getting NATO support. It is, but not to the degree that he would like, because this war is just dragging on. Now, that doesn't mean that the Russians are necessarily, making enormous strides here and just, blazing off to victory and so on. No, but they certainly have the upper hand in terms of this counteroffensive and in control of the nuclear plant. So, this idea that it's the Russians who are actually making a false flag. I mean, Jesus Christ, listen to this guy here on Sky News. Like, this is moron babbling.
Well, Kate, you have to feel for the Ukrainians to get inside their minds, really. Imagine the Russians taking control of one of our nuclear power stations at the beginning of this war, and then showing no compunction at all about blowing things up like a dam, causing a huge amount of devastation, flooding tens of thousands of homes, and then being told by your president last night that their military intelligence believes they've seen things that look like explosives being put on the roofs of the reactors, some of the reactors of that power plant, after a week where the Ukrainians have been saying that they believe the power plant has been mined. But actually what's been more worrying, I think, for the Ukrainians has been what the Russians have been saying, which in the last few days they've been accusing the Ukrainians of planning to attack the plant themselves and carry out a dirty bomb incident. The reason that's worrying for the Ukrainians is that when the Russians warn the Ukrainians about to do something, it's often a sign they are about to do it themselves, which they did with the dam. They said the Ukrainians were about to attack the dam, and then most Western intelligence agencies believe they then blew it up themselves. So it is...
Come again? What did you say? Most Western intelligence agencies believe that the Russians blew it up themselves. Okay? what are the, what is their opinion and report worth? Why would you believe a single word that comes out of a Western intelligence agency? Are you dumb or something? Is something wrong with you? He doesn't even know that whether the Russians did it or not. He's just like taking, whatever Western intelligence agencies say as gospel, right? This is the mentality that we're dealing with in mainstream media, that whatever CIA says, it's the truth. It has to be the truth. He doesn't even bother questioning it. He just he uses it as fact. Well, the CIA said it, so, obviously the Russians blew up their own fucking dam. This is the level of intellect we are dealing with. I mean, they're not exactly competition. It's just depressing, that this is considered mainstream media. I mean, Jesus Christ. How humiliating. How humiliating. I mean, I don't know what people are going to do. Can you imagine some human in the future digging up, some archaeologists digging up this shit and saying, man, you people were really dumb back then in 2023. Like, you were really dumb. What? No, we're not. It's just these particular people in mainstream media make us look dumb and make us look bad. I think most people are very switched on, but they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to think that. I mean, it's so funny. It's like he's not only saying, well, Russia are going to blow it up. He's saying the Russians have a history of false flags. Really? Like what? Give me one example besides the Western intelligence agencies claiming they blew up the Kakhovka Dam. Give me another example, a real one, like actually something you can actually prove. Doesn't matter because the Russians are evil. Of course they would do it. Remember, I when I was covering this dam, the Nova Kakhovka Dam being blown up, what did I tell you? I told you this doesn't make sense because the Russians in Crimea depend on this water flowing to them correctly. Do you understand? They need things and the channels to be routed and controlled properly. Otherwise, you will have flooding, and then the water will not enough water will reach Crimea. Right? So on the one hand, they tell you the Russians are so evil, they hate, and they don't care about international law. They just want to grab Crimea because they're evil, and they want to Russify it, and so on. But then on the other hand, they tell us, well, the Russians, they're so dumb and they don't care about people in Crimea that they're willing to blow up the dam that flows water, that channels water to Crimea. These are contradictions. These are direct contradictions. You cannot care about Crimea and then deprive people in Crimea of water at the same time. This is a blatant contradiction. How on earth do these people have jobs? It's like they fail upwards. The more shit they talk, the bigger they get. So no, I do not take this example seriously. This is a farce of a farce. And they were doing this with Nord Stream already. To this day, they're still trying to perpetuate this myth that the Russians blew up a pipeline they spent billions building, when actually they had, once again, this contradiction. Like, Russia is weaponizing gas. They've turned off the gas. They've turned the valves and cut Europe off from Russian gas. And then the Russians also blew up the pipeline. Well, why would they blow it up if they already turned off the gas? What's the point? For good measure? Who goes and does that? They publicly, openly stopped gas flowing to Europe because of sanctions. I know the Russians, they cooked up a story back then. The Russians were saying, oh, we have to repair it. That's bullshit. They were, of course, the pipelines need maintenance, but that was not the issue. The issue were sanctions. The Russians were telling the Europeans, if you want gas to continue, you have to lift the sanctions. You've been sanctioning us for 6 months. You've stolen billions. This is outrageous. So that was the issue. But the point still stands, Excuse me. The point still stands. And this continued mania of, we're going to accuse the Russians just because they are crazy. I'm sorry. This is nonsense. So I just want to show you some, these are, again, not definitive, but just some of the opinions, right? So this is from some, Ukrainian tourism site. They're saying that the exclusion zone will reach 30,000 square kilometers if there's an incident at Zaporizhzhia, and that the radioactive contamination will spread over an area about 2 million square kilometers, meaning the entire European population will be affected. And then down here, interestingly enough, they say no one will be immune to the consequences of Russian terror, not even Moscow itself. wow. So again, Putin is going to give himself cancer and and radiation sickness just because he wants to have radiation sickness. That makes a ton of sense. Well done. Well done. I applaud you on your level of intellect and reflection. This is truly staggering. The thing is, though, and I've been warning you about this for a long time, that this is not a joke, that it only takes a tiny incident to start a war, never mind a world war. Here, the Russians, you can see them deploying vehicles where basically these are to screen people, test them, treat them, wash them down, if they have been contaminated with radiation, or if they're in the contamination zone. I want to show you also here in Ukraine, they're doing the same thing. You can see here, this is in and around Zaporizhzhia. So there are 4 towns, right? And in all of these towns, they're already preparing people. They've been doing this for quite a while, actually. This is before the recent or latest hype that Russia's going to destroy the Zaporizhzhia plant. So they've been preparing for this for months. And I find this tragic. I find this sad because you can clearly see that there is an institution, there is a body called the IAEA, where they have experts, people who are perfectly competent and smart, and are willing and have gone and done the work, and they will make sure everything is fine. They are willing to do their best to keep everything fine at the plant. The Russians are letting them in and giving them access to everything they need, right? And then at the same time, unfortunately, you have these goddamn maniacs who think that it's a good idea to just blow it up and then blame it on Russia, and then that way Europe will come and join in on the fight. I mean, this is insane. This is madness. You are really literally playing with fire. And incidentally, I was reading another speech from Grossi, from the Director General. He said the same thing, the same words. You are playing with fire, by threatening or he didn't say this to the Ukrainians. He just said in general that bombing a nuclear facility is playing with fire. But I just wanted to read you one sentence here. This is from the IAEA, right? So they said here that the IAEA experts have also been conducting regular walkdowns across the 6 reactor units and other areas around the site. Access to further areas is still expected, including parts of the turbine halls and some parts of the cooling system. So Grossi said this on 15th of June when he visited it. So that's less than a month ago. He said there are no mines observed, and that was his 3rd visit in less than 10 months. So that's a few weeks ago. He's saying there are no mines. Russia has not placed any mines. And now, again, today, he's saying the exact same thing. And as I said, they have people stationed there whose job it is to make sure everything goes smoothly. Let me show you another thing here. This is from The Guardian. They said, after talking to experts, these experts told them that while their reactors would be difficult to damage, the small cooling pond is vulnerable to an explosion, which could cause partial nuclear meltdown comparable to the 1979 Three Mile Island accident in the US. Okay, and that one of the former senior engineers, said that in this specific scenario, most radiation would be contained, but if the ventilation channels are open, radiation could be released. So this brings into play the question of Ukrainian grain. Okay, you would have, I mean, I can bet you a big chunk of the grain would just be chucked out. You'd have a lot of animal life that and the environment that would suffer from this, in addition to the civilian population, of course. But the grain supply, which is very important to other countries in addition to Ukraine, is also going to be impacted by this. Just forget contamination, just the security precautions, the screening. I mean, all of this stuff, man, it's gonna be a nightmare. It's gonna be a nightmare, and it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. They're really playing with fire on this one. I wanted to highlight the Israelis. They have attacked many Iranian nuclear sites. Okay, so they're not the exact same thing as what we're talking about here. Okay, so there's a difference, of course, between a civilian nuclear program and a nuclear weapons program. you need the first to, or rather the former to get the latter. But Iran only has a civilian nuclear program, and it has a right to have that under the NPT, right? So the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which they have signed. Israel has not. But I just want to kind of show you this hypocrisy, because Iran abides by the law. Iran respects its obligations and responsibilities and treaties. Iran allows the inspectors from the IAEA, the same institution, to just, comb through wherever they please. They have the right to go anywhere they want, visit any facility they want. They have cameras running 24/7. They have special seals. Everything is so tightly monitored and verified and subjected to a strict regime. The media go and start repeating this crap from Tel Aviv, this Israeli propaganda that, Iran is working on a nuclear weapon. And the reason they do this is not because it's true, it's complete nonsense, but it's because they want to basically give Israel political cover and a blank check to keep bombing nuclear facilities. And I don't see any concern from Western media when Israel attacks the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran. Where was their concern then? Or when they infected the centrifuges with they didn't infect the centrifuges. Basically, the CIA and the Mossad, they made a computer virus called Stuxnet, and they attacked the Iranian facilities, the facility at Natanz, to sabotage the centrifuges, which are responsible for enriching uranium. So, where's the concern there? Where's the concern for that? Where's the outrage for that attack? It's still an attack. It's a virus, but it had real physical ramifications and effects. In reality, things broke. It doesn't take a lot for things to get out of hand. And in addition to that, they were literally bombing these things. You got people going there and putting bombs. In another example, the Israelis, instead of bombing the facility, they bombed the electrical power supply. I was just reading to you in how important that is. For Zaporizhzhia, you need electricity to keep the pumps moving the water, to keep cooling the reactors and so on. And what the Israelis did is they destroyed the electricity supply to the plant in Iran. And then, by extension, they sabotaged the facility itself, right? Because the power just cut off suddenly. So Israel, over and over and over, they have attacked multiple facilities in Iran, and nobody cares. Nobody says a word. Yeah, but now when it comes to some nonsense myth, this false flag that they're trying to pin on the Russians, everybody suddenly cares. Yes, you should care, but why don't you care all the time? Especially when Israel does it, right? They just give Israel, blank check. Whatever you want to do. You want to go into Jenin, go ahead. You want to bomb this Natanz, go ahead. I think it's sickening. I think it's disgusting. It's hypocritical. And I think this idea that Russia is going to bomb a nuclear facility it already controls is outrageous. Even if they didn't control it, the Russians are not morons. They're not suicidal. I know they want you to think that they're evil and they're, they're just completely out of control. That's not true. You don't have to like them or agree with them, but this is ridiculous. This is outrageous. The only person who has any incentive to bomb a nuclear facility, never mind the largest in Europe, is Zelensky, because his counteroffensive has been a complete nightmare. He looks, weak, right? They called Putin weak after the mutiny, the Wagner mutiny. What the hell does Zelensky look like then now? He looks pretty weak to me. All these tanks he's asked for, smoke, up in smoke. And to save face, and more importantly, to draw in more support and even troops, he needs to do something like this. And he doesn't care, what kind of ramifications it has. Maybe he thinks deep down that it's going to be a tiny controlled disaster, that it's not going to be as bad as Chernobyl. And maybe he's right. But, what difference does it make? Of course, it makes a difference, the size of it. But even a tiny disaster zone, right? A contamination zone. Is he out of his goddamn mind? Now, I'm not saying that he's necessarily planning on this, but if someone is, unfortunately, I have to hedge my bets on him. Once again, there's no incentive for the Russians to do it. And there's a history of this where they say, Russia blew up the pipeline, Russia blew up the Crimea Bridge, Russia blew up the Kakhovka Dam. I'm sorry, this is nonsense, this is fantasy. You are out of your goddamn minds. You are out of your goddamn minds. And the way that they are just, egging on the Russians bit by bit. Let's send more weapons. Let's, keep crossing these red lines that have been set there for decades now since the Cold War. It shows that they have no grasp on reality in Washington. And for them, they're nice and comfortable. They're all the way in Washington. They're not going to be affected by this. Their children are not going to be affected by this. Their families, nothing. In Europe, when you had Chernobyl, that's a different issue though, because remember there was a graphite tip and this cloud that carried that went around Europe, right? And carried all of the this contamination from the Chernobyl reactor. I mean, this was a different issue, right? It's a different issue, and it was much more serious. But my point here is that you had, every European city had to spray the streets with water, clean them every goddamn day, because there was a fear that this dust, radioactive dust, would settle, and then you get people with radiation sickness and cancer. You can't see it. You're not going to see it. You're not going to feel it, but it's there. And well, of course, it depends on the dose. Of course, if you're very close, you get a big dose of gamma rays and radiation. You are gone, and you could be gone in a few days. So obviously, if you're further away in Western Europe, it's going to impact you a bit less, but it's risky nonetheless. So if he has any, smart ideas and thinks he can control this, I think he's out of his mind. But again, I'm not going to start, doing this thing. Oh my God, he's crazy. We are just analyzing the facts, and the conclusion here is that only one party in this conflict has any incentive, even remotely, to do this, and it's not the Russians. I really need to underscore this point. Zelensky's statement does not mean anything, especially when the Director General himself of the International Atomic Energy Agency, this is his job. He is saying he literally went there, and he has experts who give him daily reports who are in the plant in Zaporizhzhia, and there are no mines there. There is zero evidence whatsoever that Russia is, has put explosives or anything. Nothing. There's zero. You need to remember that with Iran, this is the same thing. You had the IAEA saying that Iran is abiding by its agreement, by its obligations, verification, and checks, under the nuclear deal, so the Iran nuclear deal. Iran was doing everything. They said this multiple times, the IAEA. Like I said, they got cameras, they have inspectors going in and out all the time, they get to look at anything they want, they can see everything 24/7. And then the United States pulls out of the deal and says, oh, well, this wasn't a good enough deal, or Iran is actually building a nuclear weapons program. No, it's not. It's not building a nuclear weapons program. You know why? Because the nuclear experts are literally there and can see everything, and there's no weapons program. If they were building one, let me try and put this another way. If there was one country on Earth where you could be sure they don't have a nuclear weapons program, it's probably Iran, because no country has as much surveillance and verification as Iran does. Okay, no one is under such scrutiny. I mean, compare that with Israel, who we know already has nuclear weapons. So I don't really know what the point would be right now. It's too late. Israel never signed the NPT, didn't sign ban on chemical weapons. They don't care. They don't care at all. And we're supposed to take Israel's word, who again developed nuclear weapons in secret. It behaves like a bully. We're supposed to believe them after they have blown up multiple Iranian nuclear sites, and they vilify Iran. No, I'm not going to take their word. I'm gonna believe the experts whose job it is to monitor and verify. And just like they told the truth about Iran, where they said Iran is doing everything by the book, Iran is following the agreement, I'm going to believe them now when they say Russia is not mining the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. I'm going to believe them because they tell the truth in the past. And like I said, doesn't make it a perfect institution, but when we're talking about matters that are this crazy, this serious, I'm sorry, man, it speaks for itself. Like Zelensky can and Putin as well, they can say as much as they like, but at the end of the day, If they say there are no mines, then there are no mines. Keep in mind, no pun intended, keep in mind one thing. That does not impede Ukraine from being able to attack the plant with drones, with HIMARS, with whatever you like. Okay, and the shelling that you've had in the past. I remember this when the Russians first took control. They had me on television, and I was talking about this. I mean, obviously, I outlined the hypocrisy, right? No one cares when Israel does this, but the shells that were being fired, they were not even being done in the plant. I mean, it's still dangerous, so I obviously said that too. But it was happening in these sort of barracks that are literally next door. It's still dangerous, right? You still shouldn't do that. But if most of the shelling has come from Ukraine's side, you know why? Because Ukraine doesn't control it. Ukraine is the one trying to fight to get control of the plant. Russia is already there. They're dug in. They don't need to fight over anything. And does that make it less dangerous? No, it's still a conflict zone. It's a war zone, and you need de-escalation, especially in a place like this. Especially. But my point is that you cannot, the IAEA nuclear experts cannot see in advance whether someone is going to fire a drone, because it's impossible. They can see, however, if anything's been planted there, and they say nothing has. So we can at least trust that the Russians haven't, don't plan on doing anything, because like I said, it doesn't make sense, and there is no proof. With Ukraine, it does make sense that they might attack it, that they might attack Zaporizhzhia, and they also don't need to plant anything. They can just use drones or missiles, or there are many, many ways to do this.